So just so I'm sure I know what's going on, people who are online, you cannot see my screen, right? Right? Okay. And now you should be able to see the screen that says Equity Advisory Committee. Hopefully you can. Um, I see thumbs up. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, great. So I think we are just about ready to start. Thank you all for your patience. Um, thing I need. Okay, so welcome and thank you for coming. This is the Equity Advisory Committee for the Capital Region Transportation Council. My name is Rima Shimia. I'm a transportation planner with the Transportation Council. Hopefully you're all in that place. And I just want to do some quick introductions. Why don't we go around the room and then I'll just read off names of the people who are tuning in remotely. Actually, before we do that, just some housekeeping stuff. If you are tuning in through your computer or other device, if you could please type your name and title and what organization or municipality or whatever group you may be with into the chat. That would be really helpful for us so we can keep track of who's in the meeting. Would really appreciate that. Some other meeting guidelines just for everyone to keep in mind. Everyone's sort of an old hat at this stuff now. Please keep your microphone muted if you are not speaking. You could just use your phone function if you would like. You could turn your camera off if you want, or you could keep it on. It's up to you. You just, if you have a comment or question, use the chat function or raise your hand. And just so everyone is aware, we are recording and live streaming the advisory committee meetings. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so why don't we go around the room? Why don't we start over there?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Alex Ward. I am a neighborhood specialist with the City of Albany's Department of Neighborhood Services.
My name is Lauren Ortel. I am environmental planner with Capital District.
My name is Mark Castiglione. I work for Regional Fund. I'm Elaine Frazier, volunteer capital player. Vision Zero Task Force.
My name is Katie Carroll. I am the Disability and Program Coordinator for the Association on Aging and Work, which is based here, based in Albany, but it's a statewide organization. That's it.
Good afternoon. Andrew Tracy. I'm a transportation engineer with the Transportation Council.
I'm a founder, head of principal planner in Ramsey County.
Ed Brennan, Albany Bicycle Forward.
James Mary Ward.
Great. And online we have Bobby Wilding from Clean and Healthy. It's Clean and Healthy New York, although it got cut off. So I think that's correct. And then Chaim Simon from the Capital Region Transportation Council. We have David Banks. Not sure who you're with, David. If you could put that in the chat if you haven't already, that would be great. Jackie Gonzalez, Jeff, whose last name I'm going to butcher, starts with a W. Thanks, Jeff, for coming. Susan Larry-Liard, whose name I probably also messed up as well. Thank you all for coming. And okay, so let's get to the agenda. And for those of you who are here, if you want a copy of an agenda, I printed some out, and they are over there in the corner. So I I wanted to do a quick review of what the Equity Advisory Committee's purview is. We went over this a little bit in the last committee meeting, but since it was our first committee meeting, we went through a lot of stuff. So I thought it would just be helpful to kind of do a little refresher of that. And just do, we're going to do an acceptance of our meeting minutes, talk about the Vision Zero, the Regional Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. Having a presentation on that today by Carrie Ward. I'm going to talk about the equity audit of our 22-27 TIP. And then Andrew Tracy is going to talk about the update to our, what is it, the 2023 TIP merit score, merit scores. And then we have an update to our in-motion plan and a couple of other updates of activities that we're doing over at the council. And then I wanted to talk about interests that the participants that are here today have related to equity and transportation and what's going on with your respective organizations. And then talk about remaining meetings for the rest of the year. So just briefly, the purview of the committee. So generally, we have, I think, what, 5, 6 advisory committees at the Transportation Council, and their role is to advise staff on ways to improve our efforts within the Transportation Council related to our policies and our studies and our programs. And this one specifically, we're looking to get advice related to optimizing inclusion in our public participation process and the equitable distribution of our competitively programmed funds, and looking at sort of our core, our programs and our core documents. So our MTP, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which we're updating right now and rebranding as In Motion, the Plan to 2050. The Transportation Improvement Program, which we're going to be diving into in greater detail today. The Unified Planning Work Program, the Public Participation Plan, the Community Planning Program, which is we also call our Lincoln Program. So advising staff on equity issues within the Capital Region communities also as they relate to transportation, and advising staff on the new annual public participation evaluation report. So we revamped our public participation plan last year and created this evaluation process that we are going to be embarking on. And so we are looking to this advisory committee to help us with that evaluation process. Just checking real quick to see if I have any, waiting room people. So some priorities that we have for this fiscal year is an internal equity audit, which I'm going to be discussing today, looking at past efforts, and this is helping us inform the In Motion update and future TIP efforts. And we're also, like I said before, updating our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which we're rebranding as In Motion. We're looking to ensure that there's a strong equity-related component to that. And we're deploying an equity assessment tool that we developed so that we can maximize as much engagement as possible with historically marginalized groups as we go through that engagement process for In Motion. So also looking at evaluating and proposing ways to make room at the table for new people so that the Transportation Council boards, committees, and staff better reflect regional demographics, and looking to research peer models and consider developing internal metrics and evaluation criteria to support diversifying our vendors and consultants. So that's a quick recap of sort of what we're trying to do here why we're here today and our efforts going forward with this committee. Carrie, do you want to take over your own slides, or do you want me to just advance them as you?
I'll say next.
Okay.
All right.
All right, sure. Yeah.
So Rima asked me to come to talk to the Equity Advisory Committee about the Vision Zero Action Plan. So I'll describe it kind of in general, and then I have more of a focus on the equity specific plan as far as we've got. So this Vision Zero Action Plan is actually funded for the Federal Highway Administration grant program. There's final deadline for this round is like now-ish, but we did it years ago. And the grant program is the State Streets and for all programs. So there are some specific requirements that we have to meet that program. So we're just calling it action plan for our reason. But we're planning to build a shared vision of roadway safety capital improvement and establishing interjurisdictional partnerships across state enforcement education. We will be developing a comprehensive safety implementation program, so in other words, so fundable projects that are expected and then those will be to identify priorities for future safe street roads for all implementation grants. So that was set up as a 5-year grant program. So after this year, there was 2 more planning grants, but also. And also, the list that we have should be eligible for highway safety improvement program funding through NISA. That's a standing funding source that is there, as well as governor's traffic safety program funding, educational and enforcement funding, and then one of the requirements from Safe Streets and Roads for All is that you set yourselves up to have annual reporting on your implementation results and fresh results. Funding and see if it's happening. Here have been reporting on these for performance measures. They're required now at the federal level. The fatalities and the fatality rate for vehicle miles, probably the everyone the number of serious injuries and also the rate of serious injuries. Safe system approach is the way Federal Highway is, Federal Highway has adopted this approach, and New York State also recently adopted it in strategic highway safety, which is the Department of Transportation. So that document vision is that New York State strives for an equitable and sustainable transportation system that works towards. We'll come back to that in a minute. But towards zero fatality, zero for all roads. The graphic here depicts the safe system approach, and I can try to include this in all presentations because it is a different way of thinking about safety than what we have traditionally done. So it's thinking about all of these things together: safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads. To crash there and really the idea that is serious. So it's really gets zero, working towards zero serious, and recognizing that the human body is vulnerable, and also that redundancy is crucial. So the redundancy is crucial. I think it's reflected here. The traditional approach, we would say we wanted to prevent crashes in general, all crashes. With this approach, we're really focusing on the serious injury crashes. So kind of saying like a fender bender kind of thing is better than a death or serious injury crash. So they're not, all crashes are not the same. Instead of saying we want to improve behavior, we are designing participants to make mistakes and from the body. That's not to say that we encourage people to have bad behavior, but it's that we still should have education efforts to encourage people to behave well, but we accept that instead of controlling speeding, we're looking to reduce the systems. So that just means that recognizing speed, but also the size and weight of objects, so vehicles, trucks, and then also the angles at which like hit each other. So that's where roundabouts formally involved. That's really crazy roundabout. You're not having a T intersection. But of course, you're still instead of saying that individuals are all responsible for themselves, they're responsible for their own actions and then finally, instead of reacting based on crash history only, which we are still doing, but should proactively identify and address risks. So we know that there's a certain kind of facility or a certain kind of interest that might be doing a lot of crashes, focus on that location, even if there haven't been a bunch of crashes at that location. Looks like this slide represents the rate of fatal crashes. Yeah, I don't remember the time period, but it's over a recent time period, showing that US over there on the right showed 5.6% reduction in crashes, but other countries had a higher rate that had adopted Vision Zero kinds of so that reduction rates. This comes back to that the zero target where the New York State Strategic Highway Safety Plan said they're working towards eliminating fatalities. So under the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, which funded this, the image on the right is from the application material. But under this program, they're required at the regional level, about the grant highway, to have some kind of a Vision Zero statement. So we could say that we want to reach zero and fatality serious by a date and set that date. We don't have to do that. We could just say that we're working towards zero, but then set a target date for some city self-defined the significant, but have target for whatever kind of city. That's something that we're still kind of looking for feedback on and working on. So that would be for us as a region, and then we're going to come up with templates for others to adopt themselves as well. This is capital region data, taking a little bit further step back, looking at fatality trends, and these are 5-year averages. So that's the first one on the left where it's the highest, and then the second time is 5 years that those data from the late 70s. So this graph is showing a really pretty steep decline from like 79 to now-ish. So I think we know crashes have been increasing since COVID. I think that crashes in particular. But if you look a little bit further back, it's not as the picture isn't as dire. And that big decline in the 90s, I think is attributable to changes in vehicle safety standards and also a change, kind of a cultural change related to impaired driving, specific impairment. And then the green that we have over here is kind of following a similar average trend line, how long it would take following that trend to get down to zero. So that's showing around 2046 at that similar rate that other changes that we do. This is a table that shows that by decade, so the in 1% fatality to 5% of fatality, 2010, 2%. So far has been this is showing the planning structure and for the project. What I didn't mention yet was that when we applied for the project, we did so with financial contributions from a few municipalities in the regions. Those are the City of Albany, City of Saratoga Springs, City of Troy, City of Waterloo, and the of Green Island. And we also had financial contribution from the Department of Education, which provided cash for our portion of so the administrative is made up of staff from those financial members towards the project. And then we have our regional operations safety advisory committee, which meets quarterly, and that we're using as our technical study advisory for the project. We have the advisory committee that we set up, put in the scope for our consultant for this project. They're going to be meeting quarterly, which is going to actually meet bi-monthly now. Sorry, later than otherwise, and not listed here actually are community ambassadors we hired. 4, I believe, will need to be community ambassadors and help us with public outreach kind of stakeholder meeting. That's to get a more wide range of public input and feedback, and idea of what people's concerns are. Stakeholders, we have in our consultant contract that they will conduct a number of medical groups or standalone stakeholder meetings, but I am also available to attend additional things. So we'll have ideas of good groups that might exist for us to talk to. Even if you think it might not be the best group, I can just, if it doesn't make sense for us to pay the consultant team to do that, I can come out myself and talk to some people. So I guess what I'm saying is don't hesitate to let me know if you have a for that. And then we are having a number of public meetings with the general public. So we just last night finished the first round of public meetings to get kind of general input, and then we're going to have 2 more rounds of public meetings, general public meetings, and we're also going to be looking to set up. We're going to be doing some concept development projects that will have a lot of public input to them. Slides. Perfect. So the community advisory committee is made up of 10 members, and they're all receiving a stipend for both attending the meetings and then for reviewing materials that we have. And they'll be guiding the plans development and playing a role in decision-making processes, such as identifying projects and prioritizing the projects on the list. And the community ambassadors, that's actually, we did a hire people, but they're going to be building community relationships with local organizations, amplifying voices of historically underserved. and participating in all aspects of the project. And the list of those is available on the site. So I wasn't going to talk about all of the tasks today, but I just wanted to let you know that these tasks all exist. So this is from a consultant contract. I'm going to talk about the equity task mostly here, but they're doing safety analysis of analyzing all of the crash data and then factors that we think are towards that crash data. We're going to be looking at recommendations for speed limit reduction. So you are probably aware that the state recently allowed a number of cities and villages in certain towns to reduce their area speed limits, which can be school-wide, but not be school-wide, to as low as 25 miles an hour. We're doing that for our partner municipalities that I listed earlier, except not for the city of Albany. They already did theirs, so we're subbing the city of Schenectady instead for that task. We'll be selecting strategies and projects that are most likely to lead to a reduction in fatal and serious crashes based on safety analysis and the public input. And task 6 is the concept development. So for that we will be taking one location in each of the funding partner jurisdictions as well as where there's probably a likelihood of a reduction in crashes, but there's also an opportunity to do some public outreach, and there's a desire or a known community desire for some change at an intersection or a short segment of a road. So we'll be visiting that location out in the field and then have a indoor location somewhere nearby, walkable to that location where the consultant team will be drafting recommendations of visual spatial recommendations of changes for that location and presenting them in a public meeting towards the end of the 2 or 3 day session that will. Safety investigations are kind of like the concept development, except not with as much of a public process. We're going to be doing 40 of those throughout the region, really tied to the data so that we can hopefully set those locations up to receive implementation funding. Infrastructure funding to implement changes at those locations. We will be looking at a number of other policy and process changes that come up as part of the process that could again show reduction. Progress and transparency is a requirement at the federal level that we analyze the results of whatever we implement, and then pass the 10 and 11, just creating a draft vision zero action plan with the results of all of these things. All right, so I think most of the rest of these slides are about the equity portion. So we have looked at some existing things that we have related to equity. So the Transportation Council has an environmental justice entitlements analysis that we do with a number of factors. There's a New York State disadvantage state uses, and then the Justice 40 initiative, which is a federal initiative. This is that 40% of benefit programs have to be to underserved. And so they can pass it. So for this project, our equity priority areas are based on concentration and severity of burdens that are relevant to patient safety. And we're looking at the existing indices as reference, but they don't necessarily need to those, with the exception that we are going to try and make sure that the Justice 40 ones are included, because under future safe streets roads for all those areas will be prioritized under that program. And then the areas that we come up with are going to be to prioritize the regions. Excellent. So our analysis, we're doing a threshold analysis with relative scoring based upon regional average or regional rate for factors, and then indexing those together with a little bit of weighting. So the indicators that we're using are all census data. We're looking at the by census tracts at the minority population, below income departments, below the poverty line, limited English proficiency, coverage disability, two age categories, less than 18 and also 65 plus. And those are in black on the screen, are ones that are Transportation Council, Title VI Environmental Justice Analysis. And then we're adding in single female parent household, foreign-born people, and zero households as well. The note on the slide here is that the federal executive order added and tribal affiliation of protected categories, so we were already looking at disabilities. But we are circling back now to look at the tribal affiliation data. This slide shows the regional average or the regional rate for the different categories for the minority population and below poverty and limited English, which 3% of people, well, percent 65 plus or 6%, and then under 8%. Mother household, and zero vehicle household. So for each of the 9 indicators, if above, if that census tract is above whatever the regional rate is, then we're considering it. But with scores, so the higher you are, so we are taking into consideration 5% that census tract for each of the categories, and we are also weighting 2 of the categories double. So those are the low income and minority categories, and then we're aggregating those together and dividing those out at above the 90th percentile. Yeah. So the next slide, it's really here just so that see that we have it at the regional level. The darker, the over 90th percentile is more or less concentrated in the Albany, Troy, Waterloo, Schenectady areas, and then the 90th percentile is a bunch of their suburban college. It's a rural town areas. The top left, bottom right diagonal hatching are the Justice 40 disadvantaged communities, and then the red hatching the way disadvantaged. They're on there just for reference. So the next slide, insects. Report. So this map shows Albany, the red is greater than percentile, which is 50%. The white is less than 50. The gray is just the cities. Dots are the interstate ones, lines are the Justice 40. So you can see that all of the Justice 40 are our big vanilla areas. And then here's Schenectady, so similarly, in the highest percentile area, the Waterloo proposed and Troy has And then Saratoga's right here, right? It's just that's but slide shows the crash impacts. So we started looking at the kind of crashes together with the equity priority areas that we thought with. So this shows crash impacts um, broken out by those equity priority areas. So the areas greater than or equal to the 90th percentile have just under 10% of the regional population. And if you follow down towards the bottom of the slide, per 100,000 fatal and severe injury crashes per 100,000 residents is higher, 507 in greater than 90 areas, greater than 90. The bottom row, the vulnerable road crashes, again, just the fatal and severe injury per 100,000 residents, much higher here than it. To it, seven. We can see that there's very crash impacts based on census data. With the caveat that the crash data doesn't tell us where people live, it tells us where the crash. Equity priority areas are based on census data. So our next steps are to do some more overlays. We're gonna Replica, which is a data set that has origin destinations in it to try and get at some of that data that are going to. We're going to look at affordable housing and also with hospitals. And these intersections, looking at intersections between our network screening areas. And as we're going to prioritize some of our recommendations, provision 0 safety action, and then as we define problem statements, we're going to keep in mind strategies. This is my final slide. This is just a summary of what we are planning to talk about at the regional operations advisory meeting, which again is the technical advisory committee that we're using for this population. To the public. So we just had a meeting, but our next meeting, we should be able to review the results of the speed limit assessments, demonstration sites the concept development sites, and then our targeted institutions, the 40 locations throughout the region.
Any questions?
At what point does either group ask a question? Where are these incidents occurring? And is it because it's in front of shopping center or stubborn? Where it's a location? Where is the location? In my head, directly to the population, not where is the population. Okay, sitting. We're doing a meeting, and it's a continuation of incidents. They've got incidents with their incidents with the church that they used to go to. And they're now traveling 5, 6, 10 blocks out of the area to go to this place. Traffic is not, kids are not for everybody but A, F, and therefore you got crazy traffic. At what point does this group look at what is happening? So whatever changes have what occurred, the question yesterday. The boys roaming around looking for the Saratoga Springs Library. And who can find this in their Saratoga Springs? And given the size of the streets and whatever kind of traffic issues could there be? The Barnes and Nobles, absolutely. But are we looking at the destination? Are we interrogating the destination here and asking the same question? Because I have my gut instinct, just don't get up to go. And while we will be getting good feedback, the incidents occur at your destination, proximity to the destination. A mystery to be solved in the destination, because the destination is also required planning.
So-
We can't just
Can we let her answer the question?
did I not?
Any-
answer?
I'll answer the question. I think there's kind of two answers to the question of the specifically the location. So as part of the hotspot analysis and our highway safety investigation that we're gonna do, that's definitely we're gonna be out there looking at like what might be contributing to the issues that we're seeing in the data. But also as part of this, we're doing a systemic analysis. So that will be looking kind of more holistically at where crashes are and like what kinds of locations are near there. So like maybe it's not busy roadways that are contributing, maybe it's locations where there are libraries to same class, same art. Maybe there's a certain kinds of location or kind of land use that is co-located often with fatal and serious injury crashes. So then that might lead us to kind of a little bit different kind of questions about programs or policies that
Well, what she was saying, it used to be the idea of like full purpose, most X number of percentage of X are within so many miles of your home. That's a statistic. Yes, was, but it's something that I've heard quoted, not so much recently, but often. That most accidents happen near your home, but you're trapped. It has that changed, but still a general.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard that in the talking point.
And maybe that's an urban legend because I've heard the
Yeah.
same thing, like,
Yeah.
oh, most accidents occur within 2 miles of your house or whatever, but I haven't heard it within the context of actual, I mean, it was like a thing when I grew up, but like not a thing like within my professional life.
Interesting.
And what's the success that we had to get the independent, just immutable take on
So we're meeting with a group in Saratoga County in September. There is one in Albany County that we're made contact with, so and we're trying to get in on one of their meetings for Albany County. And 2 local police departments that did participate in discussion that are public set up. But not the one mentioned. And then I'm still working on
because it is a question that they approach to the so also is already. So, but they collect all that data. So it's stuff they have, but they're not necessarily looking at all this. And they are to conversation.
So I did want to mention, as I don't think you brought it up in your presentation, that the virtual webinar recording is up on the website, because you guys just had a series of public meetings, and one of them was a virtual webinar, and it was recorded, and it is now up on the Vision Zero website. So the link is to the page where you can access it is right there. So go check it out. If you don't have any more questions, we should move along because we are just in the interest of time.
I had a couple, I think I can do.
Okay, sure.
Um, I think they're just clarifying. So for in talking about the different like target, did you use the word targeted? Population?
Targeted safety and medication.
Okay. For the different populations, referring to minorities, that just refers to racial minorities.
That's race and ethnicity being standard group. So the minority is anybody who is not white.
Got it. Okay. And then could you define vulnerable road user?
Sorry. Yes, vulnerable road users, in the state definition for it is 3 things. It's bicyclists, pedestrians, and workers in highway work zones.
Thank you. I just want to return quickly to the weighting of the two populations that were double weighted. Weighted like how? Like what can you just explain again like what the final score is like?
So whenever the total, so it's like each, I don't know, let's say there's 6 categories total, I don't remember, but so that each of the 4, so you get 1, 2, 3, 4, for each of those 4 categories, depending on how hard you are above the regional rate for that category. So the 2 times would be 2, 4, 6, 8. So it's just weighted. They just get kind of counted as, you think of almost that they're counted as 2 categories.
Okay. Thank you. I think I just need you to say that again. So that was great. I do appreciate the question about location. And I've also heard, I don't know if it's like an urban legend or whatever, but that thing where it's like you're most likely to get hit by a car when you're in a parking lot or a driveway. And I'm sure like I don't know if that data is true or not, but I mean, I do feel very unsafe in parking generally. So I do appreciate the location question.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the equity audit for the 22-27 TIP. It was one of our priorities for our equity work plan for this fiscal year that we've been working on. And first, I wanted to go in a little bit about what the Transportation Improvement Program is, because we have some people here who are familiar with what that is and some people who aren't. We put it's all transit, highway, and other transportation improvement projects that are eligible for federal funds, and all projects of regional importance are folded into this capital program. Well, not just capital program, just all kinds of projects are put onto the TIP, and it can include things like road paving, bridge repair and replacement, culvert replacements, safety and operations improvements, bike lanes, sidewalks, roundabouts, BRT infrastructure, road reconfigurations, Pell studies, and even more. And it's an opportunity for the federal surface transportation funds come into our region and get programmed at the Transportation Council, and get put into the Transportation Improvement Program. allocated to specific projects through a process. Not explaining it very well. Andrew will do better later. So the TIP implements the region's metropolitan transportation plan. It's currently called New Visions 2050, and as I mentioned before, it's our MTP is undergoing an update to become In Motion, the Plan to 2050. The TIP covers 5 years of programming, and it's updated every 4 years.
3 years.
3 years of programming.
We
need to
it every
update-
3 years.
It's updated every 3. Oh yeah, it is.
It's 3 years
We need to-
federal plus 2 beyond.
Yeah,
Okay.
5 years of programming. We updated it.
Actually, it's on our website.
Okay.
And it's amended as needed. So what we did in this audit, this is the sort of the first phase of our process of doing an internal equity audit, is we looked at the most recent TIP update that we did, which was for the 22-27 TIP. This map here shows the EJ areas, and just sort of wipe your mind clear a little bit of the EJ analysis that Carrie just walked you through, because this one is different. Every couple of years we do the EJ Title VI analysis that she mentioned before, and we take that analysis, we identify EJ areas within the region. These are the EJ areas that we identified that were used for the 22-27 merit scores analysis that we did on the projects that were submitted to be considered to be funded through the TIP starting in 22. So the EJ areas are in pink on this map, and they show what they are the census tracts with that have more than the regional average of racial or ethnic minorities, and or more than the regional average of residents below the poverty level. So our regional average of percent minorities in our region is 21.5% in the time period that this data was pulled. And the regional average of residents below the poverty line was 12.5%. So all of the pink areas are the census tracts where the population had a higher percent of racial and ethnic minorities and or people in poverty. So what happens during a TIP solicitation is we send out a notice to all of the local municipalities and our other transportation related partners, like CDTA and NISDOT, and let them know that we're accepting applications for transportation projects, and they submit project proposals, and they send them back to staff. And one of the things that we do when we evaluate those projects is we have a merit evaluation, and we have this whole scoring system. And one of the categories that we used back in 21 for the 22 TIP was community quality of life and equity. So the merit category, there was a whole slew of merit categories, and scaled to 50 points. And there were a total of 2 points possible for environmental justice. You can get either -1 point, 0 point, 1 point, or 2 points, depending on whether or not you're in an EJ area and what type of project it is. And I'm not going to go too much in depth on those types of, what type of project will get what type of point, because we'll be here all day. And then the total possible, out of a total possible score of 100. So we're not talking about a whole lot of points here, just 2 out of 100. It's actually less than that. It would be 2 out of 76, but then scale down to 50 out of 100. So we're not talking about a whole lot of points. But it's something. So the questions that we wanted to consider for this equity audit were, we had two questions. One was, what is the proportion of the total tip of the new tip funds that was allocated to EJ areas? So you have on the right side of the screen, again, the pink areas are the EJ areas, the white is the non-EJ areas, and you have that like pink line going through, and then right here you have this little dot, which is like an intersection project. So these are our proposed projects. And our question was, okay, so you have this project here and it's going through like partially a non-EJ area and partially an EJ area. And like, how much did this actually like, what was the benefit? What was the overall like real benefit to EJ areas for this project? Like if it was funded versus a project, versus other projects. And, on the whole, how much did that project actually benefit that EJ area? And then the second question, did the EJ merit score actually affect the outcome of programming decisions for the last tip? So we tried to answer these questions. So our finding for the first question, what was the proportion of the total tip that was allocated to EJ areas? We did a mapping exercise where we took a 1/4 mile buffer around each of these projects. We had line projects, basically around road corridors or trail corridors. And then we had like point projects, basically like an intersection. And we did a 1/4 mile buffer around each of them, which is roughly about the distance that a person would be willing to walk. And we said, okay, this is sort of like the, extent of the investment influence of this project. It is an assumption. But we have to start somewhere. So that is the assumption that we took for this analysis. And then we calculated how much of this buffer area is outside of an EJ area and how much of this buffer area overlaps with an EJ area for each of these projects. And then we calculated, what for each project, what is that total? And when you add it all up, 54% of all new tip funding was invested in these pink areas of these buffers, and the rest was in the white areas. And when you look at the number of people in EJ areas that live within a 1/4 mile of a project, we're talking about 77,500 residents. If you assume that sort of the, another assumption here, that the distribution of people within a census tract is sort of uniform, right? Which isn't actually accurate, but that's kind of as good of an assumption as we can get with an analysis like this. So that's about 9% of the total regional population, and about 23% of the total that live in EJ areas. So just to compare, just for a little bit more context of this 54% of all new tip funding was invested in EJ areas. The total regional population that live in EJ areas is less than 41%. So not too bad. Not too bad. So question 2, did the EJ merit score affect the outcome of programming decisions for the last tip? And what we found is it didn't really have much of an impact. So we found that 23 projects were funded that were in or connected to an EJ area, which was the criteria that was used to determine whether or not a project got points, was if it was within or touched an EJ area. And then 24 projects were funded that were not in or connected to an EJ area. And the average EJ merit score of funded projects was 0.6, and that was just a little bit higher than the unfunded project average EJ merit score, which was 0.4. But it's also worth noting that projects with a higher score in the EJ category may share similarities that help them score higher elsewhere. So EJ areas, most of them are in more dense areas. more densely populated areas. And when you have a more densely populated area, you're going to have more traffic on your road, which means that your average daily traffic numbers are higher, and that actually gets you more points in the whole scoring system. And there's other sort of calculus that goes into the scoring that you know, can kind of like boost your points that might sort of you know, when I was in statistics in college, my professor would always say correlation is not causation. So it's sort of that whole thing, like just because there's this difference in the numbers there doesn't necessarily mean that there's a correlation or a causation. It just means that there's a pattern, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily one causes the other. So next for this analysis, for this audit, we're going to be looking at comparing like local impacts of project type. So for example, looking at like repaving of an interstate that happens to pass through an EJ area versus an intersection safety improvement project in a local road in an EJ area. So both of those projects, you know, are going through an EJ area, right? And they have price tags associated with them. And so this analysis that we did, like for question 1 of like, well, how much, you know, of an investment was like sort of allocated to, you know, that EJ area. They both sort of have price tags on them in that EJ area, but like, did one actually have a real impact on the EJ area that it goes through? Like, well, not really, because it's an interstate that, you know, it's a access controlled interstate versus.
If you repave the interstate and you get rid of the potholes, it makes it quieter. So you actually have a
Well, people might go faster.
So, and this is actually one of the things that I've been going back and forth and up and down and around about. So maybe you guys can help me unpack this, because like how to kind of figure out how to better quantify or qualify these types of projects, and like really try to identify like whether to put something in like a, you know, in like a you know, put a check mark by like a good project versus, or like, you know, has an impact on this census tract versus doesn't have an impact on the census tract. Whether or not it has a positive or negative impact aside, just thinking about like if these are all surface streets, right? And you are in a local neighborhood, like say you're in and fortunately I don't have the you know, street network on this map, but and these are local roads, and you can access them as a local, right? Then it's clear that like there's a local impact of having an investment along, you know, this corridor, right? But if this is a raised highway and you as a local don't have, like hypothetically I'm saying, if this is a raised highway and you as a local don't have access to this raised highway, how do you count just the fact that it's moving, that it's present in your neighborhood? Do you count that as an investment in your neighborhood or not? Whether or not it's a positive investment or a negative, you know, whether it's a positive or a negative, put that aside. Do you count it or not?
It all depends on your spillover. If your interstate is so bad that you're spilling off of that onto the local road network,
Right.
then you have an issue on the local road.
Right. Yeah. And so like where's that like fine line, and like where if you have you know, major collector intersecting with a a minor arterial. And you have those like intersections of like local impact versus like regional influx. Like how can you measure the impact, the impact of that project on its immediate surroundings if it's a regional project? Yeah.
You have access to data, um, works, to shops, with medical services. Because people don't just get up and drive their car. I do. Most people don't get up and drive their cars. They're just to get up. Food gas is too expensive, and there's nothing really scenic to it. Why? Use their cars to go to point A. And I would argue that ought to be survey questions from one of these groups or two of these groups. Where do your people come from? If you were to study, put up kids at the entrance of Empire State on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, you have 3 different sets of on who's going through, when they're going through, and why they're. And I have my gut instinct that somebody's got it.
Yeah, so
Because- and
we have replicate data, so that would give us who uses the infrastructure.
Why?
Yeah.
The connections to, just because you have an EJ neighborhood, a lot of those areas don't have places where you go to doctors. They don't necessarily have supermarkets. I mean, there's so many supermarket districts around.
And the EJ community that is part of this subculture doesn't use anything. They're not gonna, they don't work there, they don't shop there. They don't, so the EJ impact is one I would argue that one of the groups to talk to are the churches. Because that is a desert until one night and then 2 nights or one day and evening. Otherwise, they are vacant spaces. And kind of interesting. Schenectady had a robust downtown on Union Street before you cross, I guess it's Erie. It was all this traffic. And then foot traffic is gone. What happened? That's all accepted. But still, this church is gone. It's gone. And it was this red brick building set between, it was on Union Street, almost to Erie before, and it was between where the railroad station is now and that other part of Schenectady. It's a desert. There were restaurants, there were a whole bunch of things that went all the way up Union, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Almost, okay.
So we can look at
But here we go.
demographics and
What are we asking?
destinations.
What are we asking? The same thing is true of I call it the South Pearl Street. Okay. What happens to the traffic? Where they go? Because they used to have to like power up in order to get around that, drive through. But now it's a wasteland. There's nobody there. It's right across from the Pearl Street. Yeah, and Madison. Right. Uh, I- so I would suggest that there is value in trying to solve the mystery through inquirization, and the purpose of drug the price topic. He has an interesting story because they thinking of large shopping, grocery shopping. Person. One minute they're here, next minute they keep that data. That data informs them. So, and I'm pretty sure they have some shop there, work there, spend some.
Okay. So we have about 20 minutes left, or not even like 15 minutes left, and we want to still get to the tip merit score updates. But did you have a question or comment?
Quickly, I think, what I'd like to see the kind of that she talked about is
Yeah.
if you go to your EJ communities, find out like how much of their life do they have to spend getting to wherever they get their food, how much of their life do they spend getting to where they work, to where their community things like their churches,
And their schools.
and their
What
schools.
level of transportation do they
And
use?
Yeah,
20 minutes to get to the store because they're walking, or
right.
what's the volume?
Yeah. Some of these areas, it's only 25% of people don't have access to a car to begin with. So
And it's like,
And
if
it's
you have to
not-
walk, if you have to walk a long way around, if you can build something that's not going through an EJ thing, then it's gonna make it a lot easier. That's good for an EJ community.
and in terms of where you put your funding. I was at a meeting with police officers yesterday, and one of the things we were talking about is like interstates, and they were talking about how we're by in Skoda, by the Amazon complex, they built lots of jobs out there. They keep it having to arrest people for bicycling on I-90 because that's their mode of transportation, and they're trying to get to work. Where are they coming from? And I'm on two minds there. One, we should make it easier for people from the environmental justice places to be able to get to their work. But number two, it's like we really want to fund things out there. Should be over there downtown where the stupid where we here down where that's but you see what I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm sorry, and I
Um,
gotta say this again.
okay, but we really need to get,
Teachers.
okay. Okay, all right, Andrew. Do you want to take over the computer?
Yeah, I'll just
Okay.
just that a little bit. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Rima asked me to give a quick overview of our upcoming transportation improvement program updates and how we intend to score the projects and how equity and EJ will play into those scores. So I'll just run that through really quickly today. As soon as I can find the mouse cursor. So what is the tip? Rima covered this earlier. The Transportation Improvement Program is the list of all of the projects in our 4-county planning area that will receive at least partial federal funding from any source of transportation federal funding. We update this list of projects every 3 years. A lot of the planning work that we do here kind of funnels into the tip and identifying the best, most high quality projects that we can to receive federal funding from any of these fund sources. Pictured on the right here is the current tentative time frame for our tip update. We hope to begin in September, more likely October of this year, by issuing a call for projects to all of the project sponsors in our region, all the municipalities, the counties, DOT, everyone else. After that, we, the staff, will do an evaluation of the projects. We'll give each one a score, and then we turn those scores over to our planning committee. And the planning committee can use those scored as rough guidance to decide which projects to fund and which ones not to fund. So there's a series of meetings as described on the slide there, but we hope to have our finalized updated tip ready next summer in June of 2025. So I will briefly run through how we intend to evaluate and score these projects. As the applications come in, we're going to sort them into 6 different project categories. Each project will only be scored against other projects in the same category for a level playing field. So the 6 categories we're using this time are 2 types of road projects. We'll have pavement-only projects and then complete streets projects. So the pavement-only is for projects where they're just resurfacing. In the last tip update, this was mainly interstate highway projects. And then there were 3 local projects. I believe they were all county highways in rural areas where they were just resurfacing. For the complete streets category, this includes not just paving, but when they're doing other elements, sidewalks, curb ramps, bicycle infrastructure, something else beyond just a simple paving project. All of the bridge projects will have their own category. We spend about half of our funding on bridges. Bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure will have its own category. This is for off-road facilities. So if you're paving and doing a sidewalk, that would fall into complete streets. But if you're building a trail, we would call that a bike and ped project. We have a new project category this time around called congestion, freight, and air quality, which is not very pithy, but we made it to align with one of the federally required performance measure areas, and also to align with one of our new funding sources, which is the carbon reduction program, which may be used for that category. So congestion, freight, and air quality, any traffic project, technology project, anything that we're doing to improve freight access, or anything that we can do to improve air quality that wouldn't otherwise fall into one of the other categories. That would fall into that new category. And then we have the other category, which is a catch-all for every weird project type that doesn't fit into one of the main 5. Last year, our last tip update, we only had 1 other project that came in, and that was a planning study. It was the 890 planning study that Schenectady County is doing. So each of these 6 projects will have its own application. It'll ask questions about that project type, and each will have its own evaluation criteria as well, which I will very quickly go through. So every project will either get a benefit cost score or what we call a project benefit score. It'll get one or the other. For every project where we can assign a benefit cost score for all of the road and bridge projects, we will. The benefit cost score, to calculate that, my colleague Chris Bauer, who has our travel model, will look at the project, look at what roads or bridges are impacted by that project, and he has a way of estimating what the public benefit in terms of a dollar amount is for that project, which has a lot to do with how many users use that facility, and how far away the detours are, which is also an important factor. So we take the project benefits number, and we divide it by the cost of the project, and we take into account the life cycle of the project as well. So if you're building something that'll last 10 years versus 50 years, we'll take that into account as well. For projects that don't involve roads and bridges, and we can't assign a benefit cost ratio, we instead assign a project benefits score using another methodology, which I'll get into in a moment. And then every project, regardless of its category, will also receive some merit scores. And this is the way that we capture everything that isn't captured by the quantitative benefit cost score. So we know a lot of projects have a lot of features that, or maybe our travel model can't capture, but we still want to award points. And one of those merit scores is, of course, the Equity EJ merit score, which I'll get into in a moment. So very quickly, I'll show you how we will score each of the 6 project types. For pavement-only projects, we will assign a benefit cost score, and that'll be the majority of the score. And then we have 5 merit scores that we'll use as well. Freight impact, if we think that your project will benefit movement of goods. Project readiness is a score that every project gets. If we think your project is very shovel ready, if it already has a good design and a good cost estimate, we'll give you bonus points. Security and resiliency mainly has to do with making flood resilient infrastructure and things of that nature. Regional benefit and economic impact, this has a set of criteria. And then equity and EJ is a merit score that applies to all 6 categories, and we have up to 5 points available. And the project will receive full points if it is within or directly connected to an EJ area and has a significant focus on transit, bicycling, or walking. And then we have some definition of what we mean by significant focus. Your project will get half points if it's within or directly connected to an EJ area, but doesn't provide a significant focus for alternative modes of transportation. And then it gets 0 points otherwise. So that's how we'll score the pavement-only projects. For complete streets, it's similar, but there's more merit scores involved simply because a complete streets project usually has more project elements that we need to consider when scoring. So all of those complete streets elements will be included in the merit scores as well, along with things like ITS, which is the use of technology in your project. If you're installing smart traffic signals, for example, then you'll get some points for that. But as you can see, equity EJ is one of the merit scores here as well. For bridge projects, similarly, we have a benefit cost score and then 6 merit scores. I'll note that for bridges, you do get bonus points if you have a sidewalk or trail being added to the bridge. That's one of the merit scores that we use. Otherwise, it's pretty similar to the pavement-only score. For the bicycle and pedestrian category, this is the first category where we don't have a good methodology for calculating a dollar value to the benefits of that project. So we don't do a benefit cost ratio. So we're using this ABC method that was developed, I think, several TIPs ago. And we used it for the prior TIP updates. But my colleague, Chris Bauer, will estimate the market use of the bike ped project. So something in a downtown area with a lot of ped activity, we might say that has a big market. But if you're building a sidewalk, you know, in the middle of Siberia, we might say, well, there's hardly any pedestrian demand out there, so it has a small market. So we assign these ABC scores and convert them to 50 points, and that's what we use for bike ped project benefits score. And we also have merit scores. As you can see, equity EJ is there as well, along with a number of others that we felt were applicable to bike ped projects. For congestion, freight, and air quality projects, so examples of these projects might include traffic projects like a new turning lane or a new roundabout. It might include freight projects like truck parking or upgrading truck access to key goods movement areas. Air quality projects, that could be anything that wouldn't otherwise fall into, for example, the bike ped category, but something like electric vehicle charging or other zero emission vehicle technologies would fall into this category. Idle reduction programs for school buses or transit buses, for example, that would fall into this category. So we assign a project benefits score and a cost effectiveness score. And then again, we have merit points, including the equity EJ score.
Since those points are higher than 5, do they just get doubled?
Yep. Yes. Finally, the 6th project category is other. So we don't know what we're going to get in this category. So what we said was we might get many dissimilar types of projects. So instead of trying to give every project a 0 to 100 score and comparing dissimilar types of projects against one another, we're going to review each project for its consistency with our regional plan goals, fund source eligibility, We're going to look for documented support from local stakeholders and communities, things of that nature. We're just going to summarize all of that and then give our qualitative evaluation to the planning committee and then let them decide if they want to fund it or not. So for this category, we expect we might get more planning studies like we did last time with the 890, the I-890 planning study. We might get other ones that might fall into this other category. Or people might be very creative and give us things that we've never seen before. So that was all from me. But that was our intended way of scoring all of these projects when they start rolling in a couple of months. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. It's 5:30 and I don't want to keep anybody it's
Oh.
4:30. It's 4:30, sorry.
I didn't talk for that.
4:30. No. And I don't want to keep anybody if they need to go. Thank you, Andrew,
Sure.
for running through that. Do we have any quick questions? I think I saw a hand over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elaine?
There are two questions. The one is, I confess to exceedingly strange. Is there anything that would and stuff to the emergence of actual animals like deer? Troy has an outfit deer, and all through up and down, I don't know, skip used to it. They're deer,
Right.
full-grown deer, axi deer, mommy, daddy deer. They all up and down these roads where I don't think they've been for years. I remember kids. I remember seeing them as a kid,
Right.
and they're and so that's a question.
I would suggest that if the project had elements that improved wildlife safety,
That's it.
yeah, that we would be able to give merit points for that in at least one of the
Second
categories.
question. I've also been all over downtown Troy, and Gilded Age production in downtown Troy
Sure.
has created quite the drama, and requires that you look at downtown Troy. Are they leaving us with anything to put into transportation? Everything stops when they're shooting. Everything stops from the river back up to I call it the building that smiles at you. Everything stops, and how have they been doing it? And is anybody looking at the long range implications? Because they're going to, I guess, and they pose some very interesting traffic stuff.
Doctors that come in too, so you actually have tourism because of
Yes.
the TV show one.
Yeah.
It happens every 2 years. So.
Yeah. Question. So it's a question, and they'll be back.
To be honest, I'm as curious as you are. I think that's up to the city of Troy to. I don't think we
I mean,
are
that
involved in the filming.
I think that would just be a question of like if they feel like the investment in infrastructure changes is worthwhile for. I mean, infrastructure alterations are really expensive and take a long time. So if it's worth the cost.
There'll be a live experiment in 2020.
So, if we don't have any more questions about the tip, okay, because I have a couple of items that I want to get through.
If you want to
before we
wrap up the
adjourn.
meeting, I'd be happy to stick
Yeah,
around and
if you
answer everyone's
okay,
questions. If
yeah.
you just want to wrap things up.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, I'll stick
Okay.
around.
All right, so I did want to point out that the tip merit scores are going to be adopted by the policy board, right, on September 5th. They're going to be finalized.
The scoring process
Yeah.
was already adopted at
Okay.
a prior planning board meeting. So at the next one, they're going to authorize the call for projects, which we'll hope to put out in October.
Oh,
But
okay.
the full, if you want to see the full document explaining how each score works, that's already up on our website.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. I did want to point out that there is a new survey open for the InMotion Plan to 2050 update. It is going to be open until the end of this month, August 31st. The link is here. I believe I also put it on the agenda, so you all should have it. It is it covers our draft goals and asks for visionary projects. So please, if you haven't already, take the survey, and if you could share it with your network and social media, that would be wonderful. On the right is just a list of the draft goal titles. There's a lot more information on the Vision Zero website, more in depth about what is entailed, those goals entail, and also information about the objectives if you want to check it out. Also, we are asking for organizations out there, if you have any meetings or events coming up in the fall and you would like us to come and present about the InMotion plan, please let us know. We would be happy to attend. And I think that is the most important stuff. Oh, I did want to just make sure that the dates that I had for the rest of the year for this committee made sense, that there weren't any like glaring issues with Thursdays, October 24th and December 12th at 3 p.m. Thank you to those who filled out the scheduling survey. It looked like Thursday afternoons had the least number of conflicts for those who replied to that survey. So if nobody has any big problems with those dates, we'll move forward with those and reassess frequency in the new year. Yeah? Yes, I'm getting nods. Okay. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll have the notes out as soon as we can, and I'll see you guys in October. All right, thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome over there.
Patrick Gates,
I mean,
it's got a concept called place work. It gets to the reasons why people. Scottish sociologist.
Not bad.
The late